Most Friday mornings, at least during the school year, we have our school mass with the kids at 9 a.m. And I love that mass, well, because it's at 9 a.m., so I get to sleep in an extra hour. But that's not the only reason. It's always great to have the school kids. And usually when the school kids leave, I'm outside, like I am on Sundays as well. And I like to say goodbye to the school kids. It's always interesting. It's always the 5-year-olds, the preschoolers, no, the kindergartners in that case, like go out first. And for whatever reason, whenever they leave the church now and go walk outside, they go, "It smells like watermelon." So I got to research, does it really smell like watermelon? Is there an inside joke between the kindergartners that I don't get? I'm guessing that's the case, right? And then E1 comes right after that. E1 is elementary 1. And for that one, it's our 1st through 3rd graders. And they come next, and then it's E2, then it's adolescents. But the E1, it's always fun to watch them because they're supposed to be in a single file line. And as they march by, some will wave at me, some will make some funny face behind their mask, whatever it is. But every once in a while, they want to ask a question. And so I have to be on top of my game because, as the priest, I need to have all the answers. Now, usually the question is something ridiculous, which has nothing to do with church at all. Or it's saying, "Father Carlson, my cat did something last night." It's kind of ridiculous, right? But on Friday morning, one of the students stopped. She says, "Father, I have a question." So, all right, I'm bracing for it, right? Big theological question. And it actually was. She goes, "I noticed during Mass," probably during my homily, by the way, she said, "I was looking around the church, and I saw there was a lamb on the altar. And there's some words above it. What do those words say?" I was thinking, this is great. This is actually something we want people to do during Mass, to look around and see the different artwork and see how it all points towards Christ. And actually, everything points right there. And so I said, well, that, says Ecce Agnus Dei. I forgot, she's a 2nd grader. She doesn't know Latin. I'm a priest. I don't know Latin either, right? Or Greek, whatever that is. And so she said, "But what does that mean?" I said, "That means, behold the Lamb of God." And I said, just to let you know in the future, if you forget what that means, just look above in the stained glass window, and it says the same exact thing, but in English. Behold the Lamb of God. And of course, this is what we heard about today in our readings. We have John today with his disciples, and he sees Jesus walking by, and what does he do? He says, "Behold the Lamb of God." And actually, we have a window right over there, a 6th window. Remember, the life of St. John the Baptist, the stained glass windows, and that 6th one is John pointing. If you line it up exactly there, he's pointing right towards the altar, right where the Lamb of God is going to be. Now, if we think as well, during Mass, what do we have? The priest holds up the host and says, "Behold the Lamb of God. Behold him who takes away the sins of the world. Blessed are those called to the supper of the Lamb." How beautiful that is. But once again, what is John doing when he says this? He's pointing out to his disciples, "Behold the Lamb of God." And he's essentially saying, follow him. Remember, John the Baptist always says, "He must increase, I must decrease." And so the apostles, these disciples of John, follow Jesus. And he turns around and he says to them, what are you looking for? And come, are you teacher? Are you the one, right? Come and see. Come and you will see. And I always find it interesting of who Jesus called to be his apostles, who were his followers. I mean, of course, today we hear about Andrew, and we hear about Peter, right? And by the way, I also think, where was Peter that morning? Was he sleeping in? Why was he not with John the Baptist? What was he doing? So his brother has to go and get him. "Hey, Peter, get out of bed," right? We might have to do that sometimes with our siblings as well, or even our spouse. "Get out of bed, let's go to church," right? Well, this is what Andrew did for Peter. We have found the Messiah. And so sure enough, Peter comes, at that time, Simon, and sure enough, Simon, son of John, and Jesus calls him Cephas, translated Peter, Petra, the rock. We know all of that. But once again, Who is Jesus calling? When we look at the apostles, he's not choosing the scribes. He's not choosing the Pharisees. He's not going to the Holy of Holies. He's not choosing priests. He's not going to the temple area and choosing them. He's choosing fishermen. He's choosing tax collectors. He's choosing sinners. He's choosing people who are broken to be his apostles. Look at Peter. Peter, who the church is going to be built upon, the rock, right? And upon this rock I will build my church, is a broken individual. And we can see that in his life, that he's broken, that he still is not exactly, would not be your top choice, you could say, if you lined up 100 people to be the first pope. He might actually be one of the last people. But Jesus chose him, called him, as you're going to hear next week in the fishers of men in that gospel passage, calling these apostles forward. Of course, when we think of calling forward, we hear our first reading today as well, this beautiful passage with Samuel and Eli. There is Samuel, who's sleeping in the temple of the Lord where the ark of God was. And the Lord called to him, 3 times calls to him, Samuel. And he says, here I am. But he goes to Eli, thinking that's who calls him. So finally Eli says, ooh, this must be the Lord calling. And so when this happens, how are you called to respond? This beautiful thing. Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. Now that's Samuel. Once again, Samuel is a pretty holy person. But God doesn't only call those people who are sleeping in the temple. He wants to call all of us, even in our brokenness. And he wants to call us to be an instrument for him, to serve him, to glorify him through the way that we live our life, even in our brokenness, even in our sinfulness. You know, we can always fall into this lie of, well, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not holy enough. I can't do these things. I can't actually, even my relationship with God, I can't be a son or daughter of him. I can't live out that full vocation because I'm just not worthy. Or maybe called to, a vocation of service, be it the priesthood, religious life, diaconate, or married life. We can fall into that trap. So I'm just not good enough for my spouse. I'm not smart enough to be a priest. I mean, I definitely fell into that trap over and over again when I was in the seminary. And even as a parent, right? You may think, I'm just not a good parent. I don't have it. I'm broken. That's not true. God is the one who created you, and God created you and us in his image and in his likeness. And he can work through our brokenness. And he wants to work through our brokenness. And when he does this, we're actually able to glorify him even more, to say, look, he can work through this for glorious things. Look at St. Peter and how God worked through him. We can look at St. John Vianney, who was rejected over and over again, even to become in the seminary, and now is the patron saint of priest. We can look at Blessed Solanus Casey from Hudson, who once again was known as kind of a dumb person, so much so he could only be a simplex priest. And his whole life he served as a porter, and yet miracles happened because of him, through his brokenness, how the world rejected him, and yet God was still able to glorify the world through the actions of him, because Solanus Casey said, yep, this is who I am. I'm a simplex priest, but God can still work through me as an instrument. And there's a story I read recently by a priest, and I don't know how to pronounce his name. He's from Poland, Father Dezasher. I don't know. It's called The Mystery of Faith. He also wrote the Gift of Faith. And he tells a story in here about a famous violinist. And this violinist was going to put on a concert. So sure enough, the whole concert hall was full, and people came from near and far to see him. He was just a master on the violin. And he started his performance. And about halfway through the performance, one of the strings on his violin broke. And so what he did So he just kept on playing. And another string broke after that, and he realized someone must have cut his strings. They wanted to see his downfall. They wanted to embarrass him. They wanted him, for whatever reason, not to be able to finish this performance. But this violinist continued to play. And he went through the whole performance. And at the end of it, when he was all done, he simply put his bow down and raised up his violin. And people were astonished that they could see that this master violinist was able to continue to play the violin without anyone knowing that two of the strings were broken. And sure enough, when the crowd saw this, applause erupted like it's never erupted before. People came storming up to look on the stage. Could this really happen? Could this master violinist play music this beautiful with a broken instrument? They had never seen a performance like this before. We are broken. We are broken instruments. That is the reality. We're not perfect, but God is. And He is the perfect musician. And He can work through our brokenness. He can make beautiful music of our life if all of our strings are broken. And when we can acknowledge this and say, "Here I am, Lord. I am simply your instrument. Do with me as you will," it's going to be a masterful performance because it's not us trying to play. It's not us trying to be in charge. It's saying, "God, you created me in your image and likeness. And the great things I have, and my quirks as well, my weaknesses as well. Do with me as you will." And He will. And your life will be, as it is right now as well, a beautiful performance, glorifying the Lord with all that you do, all that you have. And so we are called to be like Samuel. We're called to be like Andrew. We're called to be like Peter and follow the Lord and say, "Here I am, Lord. I come to do your will."